who was born in Buffalo. No,
So I'm the person, yes.
she's a
I'm
Buffalo one.
I am really the one from Buffalo.
But in a German-speaking family, and so she has German language and literature and translation has been a major part of her life. She's written on some important German authors of the 20th century, Gottfried Benn and Elfriede Jelinek, who actually won the Nobel Prize several years ago. She is a poet in her own right, in English or in German?
English.
In English, so it's multi-language. And the most interesting part, we saved for last, she works as the German Girl Friday for the San Francisco Opera.
Thank you. Just a little bit to the notion of translation, since a lot of people were talking about how they came to do what they do. I don't know if the other translators grew up bilingual, but I did. And when I was a child, I thought everybody was. I had this notion that since I grew up speaking German in the home, and most of the people my parents knew because they were first generation immigrants also spoke German, or Polish, which my father spoke. I just kind of assumed that that was how it was done, that people spoke one language in their home and one language outside. So when I got to kindergarten, I decided to poll some people, new people that I met, other kindergartners, and said, so when you go home, you don't speak like this, do you? What do you mean? I said, I speak completely different when I go home. I don't speak like this. And they said, it was clear nobody knew what I was talking about. So I went home and I asked my mother, who then, much to my amazement, told me that lo and behold, there was this country called Germany where everybody spoke like this all the time, outside and everywhere. And shortly after that, my grandfather passed away, so I went to Germany for the first time. I was about 5. And I started polling people on the street, because I thought first this was a giant conspiracy on my mother's part, that she had warned everybody that I was going to speak English to them, and that that's why they didn't speak English to me, because they were supposed to speak German. And then pretty soon I realized, oh my God, actually this is actually true. Everybody does speak German here all the time. And they don't speak English, and they're not just pretending. And that's when it kind of sunk in that there even was such a thing as translation. I was just so used to going back and forth, I didn't realize that not everybody could do that. So it's been kind of translating for me has been kind of an interesting journey. What happened, I'm going to read to you some translations that I did of a very young poet. She was born in 1979 in what was then East Germany. Her name is Ulrike Almuth-Sandig. And a couple years back, probably 2 or 3, I was approached by the Poetry International, which is a journal, and they said, we're doing a German issue. Do you have anybody that you think you'd like to include? And I said, yes, I do. And I recommended Frau Sandig, and nobody had heard of her because she is rather young, but I had read a poem of hers in Die Zeit, which is probably the most important cultural newspaper, and it's a weekly in Germany, and had just been blown away by it. And they said, okay, can you get a hold of her? And I said, I think so. So I brought in 2 of her books, the first one and the second one. The third one was just coming out as I started translating, so I had it, but it wasn't in print yet. The sad thing about Ulrike is that she's now, as many poets do when they realize that poetry doesn't sell well, has since switched primarily to writing short stories, and has done something that a lot of German poets do that's not a genre that we really have very much in the United States, is Hörspiel, which is a radio play, and has written some of those as well. But anyway, because she and I got to talking when I was doing these translations via email, and we've been going back and forth, and it's interesting for me because I always, having grown up speaking German and English, sometimes it was funny that she as an Eastern German speaker and me as somebody who had always only been really exposed to West Germany, that we actually sometimes even had conflicting ideas about the German, not just what I was going to do with it in English. So But it was interesting for her when I told her, you know, how much seemed to be going on in poetry in the United States, and unfortunately this is really not as true of Germany as one might think of a country that used to call itself, you know, das Land der Dichter und Denker, so the land of poets and thinkers. The poetry scene there really isn't nearly as varied and vibrant, I would say, as the United States. And obviously we're a much larger country, but Germany does have a very large population by European standards, and, you know, German speakers in other countries as well, like Switzerland and Austria. But anyway, without any further ado, I will read you some things by Ulrike Einwand-Seindig that I hope you like. She hasn't been translated much, so you know, I wish I could tell you, yes, go and look her up. I don't know that there's really anything beyond what you're about to hear that's been translated. So I'll read you the German first and then the English translation. Ich sehe was du nicht siehst. Das ist diese unvorsichtig erratene Geschwisterlichkeit in meinen und deinen Pupillen. Siehst du, wir sind paarweise, sobald ich dich und sobald du mich siehst, geblendet von Blitzen, von Rätseln, vom Sitzen im Licht, von Hitze gelähmt. Auf halber Strecke zur Mitte der Körper wird nicht eine Bewegung verzeichnet. Die eigene Vorsicht hin oder her, mir reicht die gleichzeitige Berührung deines und meines Anblicks in Blindflug, Kinderspiel, doppelten Kopf. I see something you don't see. It's this recklessly guessed sibling sense in my and your pupils. You see we are coupled. As soon as I see you and you me, blinded by blazes, by puzzles, by sitting in the light, lamed by heat, halfway to the middle of bodies, no single movement is registered. Our sense of care be damned. For me it's enough, the simultaneous touch of our mutual gaze, flying blind, child's play, two-faced. Im Märzwald stehen wir, du und ich. Bis hierhin sind wir gekommen. Die anderen sind uns voraus. Unter den Kronen dieser Bäume sind Sommer und Winter zugleich. Im Gewicht der eigenen Leiber ähneln wir uns, du und ich, um diesen Baum, dessen Namen keiner mehr weiß, dreht sich die Erde. Und du gibst mir dein Wort, da zu bleiben, wenn ich gehe. An diesem Ort drückt nichts uns zu Boden, ins Horizontale, zu Schnee. In March woods, let's stand, you and I. To this point we have come, the others are ahead of us. Under the crowns of these trees, summer and winter coincide. In the weight of our bodies, we resemble each other, you and I. Around this tree whose name no one knows anymore, the earth turns. And you give me your word to stay when I go. In this place, nothing presses to the ground, to the horizontal plane, to the snow.